The rain came down like bullets on Seoul's empty streets. Naomi Carter stood barefoot on the slick pavement, one hand pressed against her swollen stomach, the other clutching a dead phone. Her thin dress clung to her shaking body, soaked through and useless against the cold. At 2:13 a.m., the city felt like it belonged to ghosts. She was bleeding. Not much, just enough to terrify her. 2 hours ago, she thought, her mind flashing back to Victor's twisted face, his hand around her throat, his voice venomous. "You're nothing without me. Get out." The door slamming behind her, the locks clicking into place. She'd stood outside their apartment for 20 minutes, knocking, begging. Then she'd walked, barefoot, pregnant, alone. Now her legs wouldn't carry her any farther. A sharp pain radiated through her abdomen. She gasped, bending forward, pressing harder against her belly as if she could hold her baby safe through sheer will. Tears mixed with rain on her face. Headlights cut through the darkness. A black luxury car slowed beside her, sleek and expensive, the kind that didn't belong in this neighborhood at this hour. The engine purred like a predator. Naomi's breath caught. She stepped back instinctively. The tinted window rolled down with a smooth electric hum. A man sat in the back seat. His face was all sharp angles and shadows, high cheekbones, a strong jaw, lips pressed into a thin line. But it was his eyes that froze her in place, dark, piercing, cold enough to cut through steel, yet holding something she couldn't name. He studied her with the intensity of someone who missed nothing. He didn't smile, didn't frown, just looked. "Are you lost?" His voice was deep, controlled, with a faint accent that made each word deliberate. Naomi's pride screamed at her to say no, to walk away, to handle this alone. But her body was failing. Her baby needed help. She swallowed hard and whispered the words that would change everything. "Can you please take me to the hospital?" Silence stretched between them. The rain hammered the roof of his car. His eyes traveled from her bare feet to her soaked dress to the protective way her hand curved over her stomach. Something flickered across his face. Recognition, perhaps, or memory. Then came the soft click of the car door unlocking. "Get in," he said simply. Naomi hesitated for only a heartbeat before pulling the door open and collapsing into the leather seat. Warmth enveloped her immediately. The man said something sharp in Korean to his driver, and the car pulled smoothly into motion. She didn't know that the man beside her was Kang Jae-Min, the most powerful and dangerous boss in Korea. She didn't know that by asking him for help, she just stepped into a world that would either destroy her or save her. All she knew was that for the first time in hours, she could breathe. Where is this stranger taking her? Comment below where you're watching from and hit subscribe, because what happens next will change everything you think you know about this man. The car's interior smelled like expensive leather and something darker, smoke maybe, or danger. Naomi pressed herself against the door, suddenly aware of how small she was compared to the man beside her. He hadn't looked at her again since she'd gotten in. Instead, he stared straight ahead, his profile carved from stone. Her mind raced with fragments of the life she'd left behind. 6 months ago, she'd been Naomi Carter from Baltimore, a nursing student with dreams bigger than her small apartment. Then Victor Hale had walked into the diner where she worked nights. Handsome, charming. He told her about his job opportunity in Korea, about the life they could build together. 3 weeks later, they were married at City Hall. "I'll take care of you," he promised. "We'll start fresh in Seoul. Just us." Her mother had died the year before, cancer that ate through their savings and left Naomi with nothing but debt and grief. Victor had seemed like an answer to prayers she'd been too tired to pray. Korea had been beautiful at first. Overwhelming, yes, the language barrier, the crowded streets, the loneliness, but beautiful. Victor had been attentive, sweet until he wasn't. The shift happened slowly, then all at once. Late-night meetings, strange men visiting their apartment, envelopes of cash he'd hide in their closet. When she'd asked questions, he'd grown cold. When she'd pushed, he'd grabbed her wrist hard enough to bruise. 2 weeks ago, she discovered she was pregnant. When she told Victor, he'd stared at her like she'd ruined his life. Tonight, he'd finally shown her who he really was. "We're here," the man said, startling her from her thoughts. Naomi looked up. They weren't at a hospital, at least not one she recognized. The building was modern glass and steel, discreet, with no emergency room signs. A private facility. the kind that cost more per hour than she'd made in months. I can't afford, she started. You're not paying, he interrupted, already stepping out of the car. He moved with absolute control, every gesture economical, purposeful. He opened her door himself, not touching her, but hovering close enough that she felt his presence like heat. When she stumbled stepping out, his hand caught her elbow. Steady, warm. This way. The automatic doors opened before they reached them. Inside, the lobby was pristine and empty except for a woman at the front desk who jumped to her feet the moment she saw him. Mr. Kang! Her eyes widened. She bowed deeply. We weren't expecting. Get Dr. Kim, now. His tone left no room for discussion. The receptionist grabbed her phone, fingers shaking slightly as she dialed. Naomi watched this exchange with growing confusion. Mr. Kang, the way the woman had reacted, like he was someone important, someone powerful. Within minutes, a doctor appeared, a Korean-American woman in her 40s with kind eyes and a crisp white coat. Mr. Kang, she said, her voice warm but laced with caution. What can we? She stopped when she saw Naomi. Oh, come with me, honey. Dr. Sarah Kim led Naomi to an examination room while Miss stayed behind. Through the closing door, Naomi saw him pull out his phone, speaking in rapid Korean to someone. His expression remained unreadable. Let's check you and the baby, Dr. Kim said gently. You're safe now. But as the doctor worked, checking her vitals, performing an ultrasound, cleaning the small cut on her foot, Naomi couldn't shake the questions multiplying in her mind. Who was this man? Why had he helped her? And why did the entire hospital staff seem terrified and reverent in equal measure? After the exam, Dr. Kim smiled. Baby's heartbeat is strong. You're dehydrated and stressed, but you're going to be okay. I want to keep you for observation tonight. When Naomi returned to the waiting area, she found Mr. Kang exactly where she'd left him. He hadn't moved, hadn't sat down, just stood by the window, hands in his pockets, staring out at the rain-soaked city as if he owned it. A younger man in a dark suit stood beside him, speaking in a low, urgent voice. Sir, the situation with the Choi. He stopped abruptly when he noticed Naomi. Mr. Kang turned. His eyes met hers, and for the first time, she saw something shift in them. Not quite warmth, but not ice either. You're staying overnight, he said. It wasn't a question. Yes. Thank you. I'll find a way to repay. No need. He moved toward the exit, the man in the suit following. Then he paused, glancing back. What's your name? Naomi. Naomi Carter. He nodded once, as if filing the information away. Rest, Miss Carter. And then he was gone, leaving behind only questions and the ghost of warmth from where his hand had steadied her. Naomi touched her stomach gently, whispering to the life inside her. Who did we just meet, little one? She didn't know yet, but deep down in that place where instinct lived, she felt it, the pull of something inevitable. This stranger wasn't just anyone. This was the beginning of everything. Morning light filtered through the hospital room's blinds, soft and forgiving. Naomi woke to the steady beep of monitors and the unfamiliar comfort of clean sheets. For a moment, she forgot where she was. Then memory crashed back. The rain, the stranger, the rescue. She touched her stomach. Still there. Still safe. The door opened quietly. Mr. Kang stepped inside, looking exactly as he had last night, composed, unreadable, dressed in a perfectly tailored black suit. But in daylight, she noticed details she'd missed. The tiredness around his eyes. The precise way he moved, like every action was calculated 3 steps ahead. You're awake, he said simply. Dr. Kim says you and the baby are stable. Thank you. The words felt inadequate. I don't know how to repay. He raised a hand, cutting her off. Miss Carter, where will you go when you leave here? The question hit like a fist. Naomi looked down at her hands. I don't know. Your husband? Is not an option. Her voice hardened. Ever. Jae-Min studied her for a long moment. Then he reached into his jacket and pulled out a business card, placing it on the table beside her bed. I have a property, secure, private. You can stay there until you figure out your next steps. Naomi picked up the card. Heavy cardstock, embossed letters. Kang Jae-Min, CEO, Kang Enterprises. A legitimate businessman then. Relief and suspicion warred inside her. Why would you do this for a stranger? His expression didn't change. Because you need help, and I can provide it. I can't accept charity. It's not charity. It's a temporary solution to an immediate problem. He moved toward the door, then paused. You asked me for help last night. I'm offering it now. What you do with that offer is your choice. Across the city, in a cramped apartment in Itaewon, Victor Hale's phone buzzed. He grabbed it with shaking hands, still drunk from the bottle he'd finished at dawn. What? Found her. The private investigator's voice was flat, professional. Private hospital in Gangnam. Checked in last night under the name Naomi Carter. Someone paid her bill in full, cash. Victor's blood ran cold, then hot. Who? Still tracking that, but the hospital? It's connected to Kang Enterprises. Kang. Victor pulled up his laptop, fingers flying across the keyboard. The search results made his stomach drop. Kang Jae-Min, one of Korea's wealthiest CEOs. Legitimate businesses spanning real estate, tech, exports. But Victor knew better than to trust surface appearances. He'd been in Korea long enough to understand that power here had layers, and men like Kang didn't just help random pregnant women out of kindness. His mind raced through the implications. Naomi knew everything, every transaction, every forged document, every dollar he'd laundered through her name. He'd been so careful to make her complicit without her realizing it. Joint bank accounts, signatures on papers she hadn't read, investments made in her name. If she talked to the police, to a lawyer, to anyone, he was finished, and now she was under the protection of someone with real power. Victor slammed his laptop shut. He needed to find her, needed to remind her what happened to people who betrayed him, needed to make sure she understood that silence was her only option. He dialed a number he'd hoped never to use. "It's Hale," he said when a voice answered in Korean. "I need information on someone, Kang Jae-Min, and I need to know how to get to his properties." The man on the other end laughed, a cold, knowing sound. "You're playing a dangerous game, American. Just get me the information." By afternoon, Naomi sat in the passenger seat of Jae-Min's car again, watching Seoul's gleaming towers pass by. They drove through Gangnam, past luxury boutiques and restaurants she could never afford, until they pulled into an underground garage beneath a residential high-rise. The elevator opened directly into a penthouse that stole Naomi's breath. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the Han River, modern furniture in blacks and grays, art on the walls that looked museum quality. Everything pristine, expensive, untouched. "This is too much," she whispered. "It's secure," Jae-Min said, setting her small bag. The hospital had provided basics on the marble counter. "The building has 24-hour security. No one enters without clearance. You'll be safe here." He showed her the bedroom, the bathroom stocked with toiletries, the kitchen filled with food she hadn't seen him order, every detail anticipated, every need considered. "Stay as long as you need," he said. "There's no timeline." When he turned to leave, Naomi found herself reaching out, her fingers barely brushing his sleeve. He stopped, looking down at where she touched him. "Why are you doing this?" she asked again, needing to understand. Jae-Min's jaw tightened. For a moment, she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, "Because someone should have helped you sooner, and no one did." His hand rose, slow, careful, and for one breathless second, she thought he might touch her face. Instead, he stepped back, breaking the connection. "My number is programmed into the phone on the counter. If you need anything, call." Then he was gone, leaving Naomi alone in a penthouse that felt like both sanctuary and cage. She moved to the window, pressing her palm against the cool glass, and wondered what kind of man rescued strangers with such precision. What kind of man had the power to make her feel both completely safe and utterly terrified of what came next? 2 weeks passed like a dream Naomi didn't want to wake from. The penthouse became familiar. She learned which window caught the sunrise, which corner of the couch was most comfortable for her growing body, how the shower had 17 different settings. But what she didn't expect, what caught her completely off guard, was how often Jae-Min came by. Every evening around 9, he'd arrive, sometimes with groceries, sometimes with books he thought she'd like, always with that same careful control, like he was afraid one wrong move would shatter something fragile between them. Tonight she found him on the balcony, tie loosened, jacket draped over the railing. The Seoul skyline glittered behind him like scattered diamonds. "Couldn't sleep?" she asked, stepping outside with 2 cups of tea. He accepted one with a slight nod. "Busy day?" "You say that every day." She settled into the chair beside him. What does a CEO of Kang Enterprises actually do? Manage problems before they become disasters. His lips quirked, almost a smile. Make decisions other people don't want to make. Sounds lonely. He glanced at her, something unreadable crossing his face. It can be. They fell into comfortable silence. This was their routine now, these late-night conversations where she did most of the talking, and he listened with an intensity that made her feel like every word mattered. I lost my mom last year, Naomi said softly, fingers wrapped around her warm cup. Cancer. She fought for 14 months, but she swallowed hard. I was alone after that, completely alone, until Victor. He wasn't the answer. No, he was just another kind of lonely. She looked at Jae-Min. You ever feel like you're waiting for your real life to start? Like everything up until now was just practice? His dark eyes held hers. Every day. The moment stretched between them, charged with something neither acknowledged. Say something in Korean, she said suddenly, needing to break the tension. What would you like me to say? I don't know. Teach me something useful, he considered. 감사합니다. 감사합니다. It means thank you. She repeated it, stumbling over the syllables. He corrected her pronunciation, patient, and when she finally got it right, his rare smile appeared. Small but genuine. Perfect. Her heart did something dangerous in her chest. But shadows gathered at the edges of their borrowed peace. Naomi noticed the men in suits who visited sometimes, speaking rapid Korean in the living room while she stayed in the bedroom. She noticed how Jae-Min's phone rang at odd hours, how his expression would shudder when he answered. How his driver, Sung-ho, watched her with protective concern, like she was something valuable and breakable. One afternoon, his assistant Min-jun arrived with papers for Jae-Min to sign. Naomi overheard their conversation from the kitchen. Sir, this is becoming complicated. Min-jun's voice was low, urgent. She can't know. If word gets out that you're, that's enough. Jae-Min's tone allowed no argument. She's a liability. Her husband is asking questions. I said enough. Naomi pressed her back against the wall, heart pounding. Her husband, Victor, was looking for her. Of course he was. She pulled out the phone Jae-Min had given her and did what she'd been avoiding, called her friend Rachel in Baltimore. Naomi? Oh my God, where have you been? Victor filed a missing person report, the police. Rachel, stop. I'm fine. I'm safe. I can't come back. What happened? Victor said you had some kind of breakdown, that you ran off. He's lying. Naomi's voice hardened. He threw me out. I'm pregnant, Rachel, and he... She stopped, not wanting to say the rest. Silence. Then, Jesus, Naomi, you need to be careful. Whatever you're mixed up in, Victor's not playing games. He's dangerous. After she hung up, Naomi sat on the couch, arms wrapped around herself. Dangerous, yes, but maybe not as dangerous as the man who'd saved her. That night, Jae-Min arrived late, exhaustion carved into every line of his face. He stopped in the doorway, surprised to find her in the kitchen. You cooked? Attempted to cook, Naomi corrected, gesturing at the table. It's probably terrible, but I wanted to. I don't know. Say thank you somehow. He moved closer, studying the spread. Rice only slightly burnt, vegetables stir-fried into submission, meat that was definitely overcooked. Something in his expression softened. It looks perfect. They ate together, and somewhere between the bad food and the good company, Naomi started laughing. Really laughing, the kind that came from deep in her belly, from a place she thought Victor had killed. Jae-Min watched her with something like wonder. What? She asked, wiping her eyes. Nothing. He shook his head. Haven't heard that sound in a long time. What sound? Joy. The word hung between them. Naomi felt her smile fade into something deeper, warmer. Jae-Min stood, moving around the table toward her, and she rose to meet him. Why are you helping me? She whispered, the question taking on new meaning now. He was close enough that she could see gold flecks in his dark eyes. Because you asked, and no one asks me for anything real. His hand lifted slowly, giving her time to pull away, and cupped her jaw. His thumb brushed her cheek. Naomi. His phone exploded with sound. They jerked apart. Jae-Min answered with a curse in Korean, his expression transforming from soft to stone in a heartbeat. He spoke rapidly, each word sharp as a blade, then hung up. I have to go. Now? Now. He was already moving toward the door. Lock the door behind me. Don't open it for anyone. Jae-Min. He stopped, looked back. I'll be back before morning, I promise. Then he was gone, leaving Naomi alone with her racing heart and the taste of almost on her lips. 3 days after the almost kiss, Naomi couldn't sleep. She padded into the living room at midnight, turned on the television for company, and froze. Jaemin's face filled the screen. He stood at a podium in an immaculate suit, cameras flashing like starbursts around him. The news anchor's voiceover played in Korean, but the English subtitles told the story. Kang Jae-Min, CEO of Kang Enterprises, announces expansion into Southeast Asian markets. The business empire, valued at over $40 billion, continues its unprecedented growth. $40 billion. Naomi's hand went to her throat. She'd known he was wealthy, but this was power on a scale she couldn't comprehend. The screen showed aerial shots of buildings bearing his company's logo, manufacturing plants, office towers in every major city in Asia. The man who brought her tea and listened to her talk about her dead mother controlled an empire. When Jae-Min arrived an hour later, she was waiting. "You didn't tell me," she said without preamble. He stopped in the doorway, reading the situation instantly. His eyes went to the television, now dark, then back to her face. "Tell you what? That you're him, Kang Jae-Min, one of the most powerful men in Korea." Her voice shook. "I thought you were just, I don't know, successful, wealthy, but you're untouchable." He set down his briefcase with careful precision. "Would it have changed anything?" "I don't know. Maybe." She stood, agitation propelling her forward. "Why would someone like you help someone like me? What do you want from this?" "Nothing." The word came out sharp. "I want nothing from you, Naomi." "Then why?" "Because." He stopped, jaw working. When he continued, his voice was softer. "Because I could. Because you needed help and I had the means to give it. Does there need to be another reason?" She studied his face, looking for deception and finding only exhaustion. "I run a large company," he said finally. "I have influence, resources. I use them as I see fit. That's the truth." But it wasn't the whole truth. Naomi could feel that. Still, looking at him now, this man who'd shown her more genuine kindness than her own husband, she found she didn't care. "Okay," she whispered. Something eased in his expression. "Okay? You're still the person who stopped in the rain. That's what matters." Across the city, Victor Hale stared at his phone screen, at the call records his contact had pulled from the phone company. Rachel's number. A call to Seoul, duration 7 minutes. He triangulated the general area. Gangnam. Expensive. Protected. He needed help, the kind that came with blood on its hands. The meeting was set in a pojangmacha, a street tent restaurant in Taiwan where questions weren't asked. The man who sat across from Victor looked ordinary, middle-aged, forgettable face, cheap suit. But his eyes were a predator's. "You want information on Kang Jae-Min," the man said in accented English. "Dangerous curiosity. I want access to his properties, his schedule, anything that helps me find my wife." The man smiled without warmth. "Your wife is under Kang's protection. That makes her untouchable." "Everything has a price." "True." The man leaned forward. "My employer Choi Sun-woo has interest in Kang's vulnerabilities. You give us information about your wife, her value to him, her location, her routines. We give you access and protection." "And the money?" $500,000. American. Victor's breath caught. That kind of money could buy a new life, a new identity, freedom. "Deal," he said. The man's smile widened. "Choi Sun-woo will be pleased. You've just given us exactly what we need to bring Kang Jae-Min to his knees." 4 days later, Jae-Min took Naomi to a private clinic in a building she didn't recognize. No signs, no waiting room. Just a discreet entrance and an elevator that required a key card. "Another ultrasound," he explained. Dr. Kim wanted to check the baby's growth. The examination room was state-of-the-art. The technician was professional, kind, and carefully didn't ask about the tall, intense man standing in the corner watching everything with laser focus. When the image appeared on screen, tiny hands, a beating heart, a profile that looked impossibly human, Naomi's breath caught. "There's your baby," the technician said warmly, "measuring perfectly, strong heartbeat." Naomi couldn't look away from the screen. Her baby, real, alive, growing despite everything. She felt warmth and closed her hand and looked down in surprise. Jaemin's fingers had laced through hers, his grip gentle but firm. He stared at the screen with an expression she'd never seen before, wonder maybe, or something deeper she couldn't name. "Beautiful," he murmured. The technician smiled. "Dad can come to the next appointment too if he'd like. We'll be able to tell gender by then." Awkward silence bloomed. Naomi started to correct her, but Jae-Min spoke first. "I'll be there." Their eyes met. Something passed between them, an acknowledgement, a promise, a shift from what they were to what they might become. "I'll be there," he repeated, softer, just for her. Outside, they didn't notice the car parked across the street, didn't see the camera lens catching every moment, her hand in his protective stance, the way they looked at each other like the world had narrowed to just them. The photos were sent within the hour. Victor opened the message and felt victory surge through his veins. There she was, proof, location, and more than that, proof that Kang Jae-Min cared. Men like Kang didn't hold hands, didn't attend ultrasound appointments, didn't look at women like they were the answer to questions they'd stopped asking, which meant Naomi was leverage. Perfect, beautiful leverage. He forwarded the images to his new partners with a simple message: "Found her. When do we move?" The response came immediately. "Soon. Very soon." In the warehouse on the outskirts of Seoul, Choi Sun-woo studied the photographs and smiled. Kang Jae-Min, the untouchable king, had finally shown weakness. And weakness, in their world, was fatal. The morning arrived clear and cold. Naomi woke to find a note on the kitchen counter in Jae-Min's precise handwriting. "Emergency meeting. Back by afternoon. Stay safe. J.M." She smiled despite herself, tracing the letters with her finger. 3 weeks ago, she'd been abandoned in the rain. Now she woke to notes from a man who looked at her like she mattered. Her phone buzzed. Dr. Kim's office confirming her follow-up appointment at 2 o'clock. Naomi hesitated. Jae-Min would want to take her, but he'd been so busy lately, shadows under his eyes deepening. She could handle one appointment alone. She was stronger now, healing. She texted him, "Going to appointment. Don't worry, back soon." The car service Jae-Min had arranged picked her up at 1:30. Professional, quiet, safe. She never saw the second car following 3 vehicles back. At the clinic, everything seemed normal. She checked in, sat in the waiting room, read a magazine she couldn't focus on. When they called her name, she stood and froze. Dr. Kim wasn't in the examination room. 3 men were. Naomi spun toward the door, but a hand clamped over her mouth. Chemical sweetness flooded her senses. She fought. God, she fought. Kicking, clawing, trying to scream through the hands, suffocating her. But the drug worked fast. The world tilted sideways. Her last conscious thought was of her baby, and the man who'd promised to protect them both. Jaemin's meeting ran long. Tedious negotiations about shipping routes and profit margins, things that once consumed him but now felt hollow. His mind kept drifting to Naomi, to her appointment, to the promise he'd made. "I'll be there," but he wasn't. His phone rang at 3:47 p.m., Dr. Kim's number. "Mr. Kang." Her voice was tight with fear. Naomi never arrived for her appointment. The world stopped. "What?" "She confirmed this morning, but she never checked in. I called the penthouse, no answer. I thought maybe." Jae-Min was already moving, Min-jun scrambling to follow. When was she supposed to arrive? 2 o'clock. Nearly 2 hours ago. 2 hours. His phone was out, dialing Sung-ho. "Track her phone. Now, and get every man we have on the street. She's missing." The drive back to Gangnam took 12 minutes. 12 minutes of ice spreading through his chest, replacing blood with something colder, something deadlier. The penthouse was empty. Her phone sat on the counter, right where she'd left it that morning. Jae-Min picked it up with shaking hands. No, not shaking. He didn't shake. He was Kang Jae-Min. He controlled half of East Asia. He didn't. His phone rang. Unknown number. "Speak," he answered in Korean. "Mr. Kang." The voice was smooth, amused. "My name is Choi Sun-woo. I believe I have something of yours." Every molecule in Jaemin's body went cold. "Choi, you've been soft lately, distracted. Now I understand why." A pause. "She's quite beautiful. You're pregnant American. Fragile, though. One might worry about what stress could do to her condition." Jaemin's free hand closed into a fist. "If you touch her, you'll what? Destroy me?" Choi laughed. "You've had years to try, but now you have something to lose. That changes everything. Name your price. The Western Territories, your shipping contracts, and your promise to never expand into my operations again." Everything. Choi was demanding everything Jae-Min had built over 15 years. "You have 12 hours to decide," Choi continued. "After that, well, accidents happen, especially to pregnant women." The line went dead. For 10 seconds, Jae-Min stood perfectly still. Then the mask shattered. "Min-jun," his voice could have cut steel. "Get everyone. I don't care where they are or what they're doing. Every man, every contact, every resource we have. Shut down the ports. Monitor every airport. Close every exit from this city. Minjun's eyes widened. Sir, do it. Now. Within an hour, Seoul's underworld received a message that would echo for years. Kang Jae-Min was at war, and God help anyone who stood in his way. Naomi woke to concrete and cold. Her head pounded. Her mouth tasted like chemicals. She tried to move and felt rope bite into her wrists, securing her to a metal chair. Panic clawed at her throat. The warehouse around her was vast and empty, lit by failing fluorescents. Somewhere, water dripped with steady rhythm. Awake. Good. Victor emerged from the shadows, and Naomi's fear transformed into rage. You, she breathed. Me. He crouched in front of her, face twisted with something ugly. You should have stayed quiet, Naomi. Should have accepted your place. My place? You threw me out because you were becoming a liability. You knew too much about my business, about the money. He grabbed her chin, forcing her to look at him. But then you had to go and involve Kang Jae-Min. Do you have any idea what you've done? He helped me. He made you valuable. Victor released her roughly. You were nothing. Just another stupid American girl I could use. But now you're leverage against one of the most powerful men in Korea. That's worth something. Horror dawned cold and complete. You sold me. I sold information. The Choi Syndicate was very interested to learn that Kang Jae-Min has a weakness. They're going to use you to destroy him. And I'm going to be paid $500,000 to disappear. Tears burned Naomi's eyes, but she refused to let them fall. He'll find me. Maybe, probably, Victor shrugged. But by then, you'll be dead, and it'll look like he failed to protect you. Either way, I win. He walked away, leaving her alone with her terror. But alone also meant unwatched. Naomi looked down at her restraints, then around the warehouse floor. 3 feet away, broken glass from a shattered bottle, one shard particularly long and sharp. She thought of her mother fighting cancer for 14 months, never giving up. Thought of the baby inside her who deserved a chance at life. Thought of Jae-Min's promise. I'll be there. She wasn't helpless. She'd never been helpless. Naomi began working the chair toward the glass, inch by painful inch. Somewhere in Seoul, 2 guards spoke in casual Korean, not knowing she understood fragments from her weeks of practice. Kang Jae-Min isn't just a CEO, controls half of East Asia's underground, most dangerous man in Korea. The truth crashed over her like ice water. The empire she'd seen on television was only part of the story. Jae-Min wasn't just powerful, he was something else entirely. Something dark. But here now, tied up and pregnant and fighting for her life, Naomi found she didn't care. He'd saved her when no one else would. That was the only truth that mattered. Her fingers finally closed around the glass shard. I'm not dying here, she promised her baby silently. We're going home. The warehouse door exploded inward at 11:47 p.m. Naomi's head snapped up from where she'd been sawing at her restraints, the glass shard slippery with her blood. 50 men in black poured through every entrance, systematic, silent, lethal. And at the center of it all, Kang Jae-Min. She'd never seen him like this. Gone was the controlled businessman in the tailored suit. This man moved like violence personified, every step purposeful, a gun held with casual expertise, his expression carved from winter itself. Blood spattered his white shirt. His eyes swept the warehouse with predatory precision. When those eyes found her, the world stopped. For 3 heartbeats, they stared at each other across the vast space. She saw him take in her bound wrists, the blood on her hands, the defiant tilt of her chin despite her terror. Something flickered across his face, relief so profound it looked like pain. Then chaos erupted. Choi's guards opened fire. Jae-Min's men responded with brutal efficiency. The warehouse became a storm of gunshots and shouts. Naomi screamed, ducking as low as her restraints allowed, covering her stomach with her bound hands. Through the violence, she watched Jae-Min move, fluid, controlled, terrifying. He wasn't just giving orders. He was fighting, directing, commanding an army that obeyed without question. This wasn't a CEO. This was a king in his element. Victor broke from cover, sprinting toward a side exit. He made it 10 feet before Sung-ho materialized from nowhere, tackling him to the concrete. Victor's face hit the ground with a sickening crack. Within 5 minutes, it was over. Choi's men were disarmed, subdued, or fleeing. The warehouse fell silent except for groaning and the drip of water. Jae-Min walked toward Naomi, each step measured. Blood stained his hands. His expression was unreadable. He knelt in front of her chair, eyes scanning her for injuries. Naomi. Her name on his lips broke something open. Tears she'd been holding back spilled over. You came. Always. He pulled a knife from his belt and cut her restraints with quick, precise movements. Her hands fell free, and immediately he was examining the cuts from the glass, his touch gentle despite the violence still humming in the air around them. You were cutting yourself free, he said softly, something like pride in his voice. I wasn't going to wait around to be rescued. His eyes met hers, and for the first time since he'd entered, she saw past the warrior to the man beneath. No, you wouldn't. Her voice shook. What are you? He went still. What did they tell you? Enough. She pulled her hands back, suddenly aware of the gulf between them. You're not just a CEO. You control, you rule. The shadows. Yes, he stood, helping her to her feet. This is who I am, Naomi. This is the world I live in. You lied to me. I protected you from this. His jaw tightened. I gave you safety, distance. By bringing me into the center of it? Her voice rose, anger and fear mixing. They took me because of you. Victor sold me because I was valuable to you. The words came out raw. I know, and I will carry that guilt until I die. But I couldn't. He stopped, struggling with something. I couldn't stay away from you, even knowing the danger. Before she could respond, Sung-ho approached, dragging a bloodied Victor. Sir, what do you want done with him? Jae-Min turned, and Naomi watched his expression transform into something cold and merciless. He walked toward Victor slowly, each step a promise of retribution. Victor looked up, fear stark in his eyes. Please. You threw away the only real thing you ever had, Jae-Min said quietly. You used her, beat her, abandoned her pregnant in the rain, and when someone showed her kindness, you sold her to my enemies. I didn't know who you were. That makes it worse. Jae-Min crouched to Victor's level. You didn't sell her for strategy. You sold her for money. Your own wife, the mother of your child. Victor's eyes darted to Naomi. Baby's not mine. We never. The baby is hers. That's all that matters. Jae-Min stood, nodding to Sung-ho. Take him to the authorities. I've compiled evidence of every illegal transaction he's made. Fraud, money laundering, identity theft. He'll spend the next 20 years in prison. You can't, Victor started. Prison is mercy, Jae-Min interrupted, his voice like steel. Be grateful I don't give you what you deserve. Victor was dragged away, screaming threats that turned to pleas. Another phone call, this one brief and in rapid Korean. When Jae-Min hung up, he turned to Min-jun. Choi Sun-woo? Surrounded. His entire operation is collapsing as we speak. Good. Send the message. Anyone who touches what's mine will lose everything. Their territory, their power, their lives. The words hung in the air, a declaration that would echo through Seoul's underworld for years. Then Jae-Min returned to Naomi, his expression softening incrementally. We need to get you to the hospital. I can walk. He lifted her into his arms before she could finish, cradling her against his chest. She should have protested, should have demanded to be put down. But she was exhausted, terrified, and despite everything, despite the violence and the lies and the danger, she felt safer in his arms than she had anywhere else. Hold on to me, he murmured. So she did. The private hospital room was exactly the same as 3 weeks ago. Same monitoring equipment, same soft lighting, same antiseptic smell. But everything felt different. Naomi sat propped against pillows, bandages on her wrists, an IV drip feeding hydration into her system. The ultrasound had shown the baby safe, heartbeat strong, miraculously unaffected by her ordeal. Dr. Kim had cried with relief. You're both going to be fine, she'd said, squeezing Naomi's hand. But Naomi didn't feel fine. She felt fractured, like pieces of different lives were fighting inside her skin. Through the window in the door, she could see Jae-Min. He'd been there for 6 hours, standing in the same spot, still in his blood-stained clothes, refusing to leave, refusing to rest. Dr. Kim had tried to make him go home. Mr. Kang, she needs rest. I'll be quiet, he'd said simply, but I'm not leaving. Now watching him through the glass, Naomi thought about her mother, about the cancer that had stolen her slowly, and the strength that had kept her fighting until the very end. Her mother's voice echoed in memory. Real love isn't perfect, Naomi. It's not safe or simple. Real love is present. It shows up. It fights. Jae-Min had fought an entire syndicate for her. had mobilized an army, had torn through Seoul's underworld like an avenging angel. For her, she pressed the call button. A nurse appeared within seconds. "Can you ask Mr. Kang to come in?" The nurse nodded, disappearing. Moments later, Jae-Min entered cautiously, as if approaching something fragile. Up close, she could see the exhaustion carved into his features, the way his hands trembled slightly before he fisted them. "Naomi, do you need?" "Sit down." Her voice was soft but firm. "And tell me everything enough. No more protection, no more distance. The truth." He sank into the chair beside her bed, looking more vulnerable than she'd ever seen him. For a long moment, he said nothing. "Then, I was orphaned at 12. My parents were killed in what the police called an accident, but I knew better. I grew up on the streets, learned to survive, learned to fight. By 17, I was working for one of Seoul's syndicates. By 25, I'd taken over." His voice was steady, factual, but she heard the pain beneath. "I built an empire from nothing, legitimate businesses on the surface, real estate, technology, shipping. But underneath, I controlled territory, operations, power. I became exactly what I needed to be to survive. Untouchable, feared, and lonely," Naomi added softly. His eyes met hers. "And lonely. I lived in darkness so long I forgot what light looked like, forgot what it felt like to care about something beyond power and control." He leaned forward, hands clasped. "Then you asked me for help. You pregnant, abandoned, bleeding, asked a stranger to take you to the hospital. You could have driven past. I tried to, told my driver to keep going." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "We made it half a block before I ordered him to turn around. Something about you." He shook his head. "You reminded me that there were still people in the world worth protecting, that kindness still existed." Naomi felt tears gathering. "I'm not afraid of your world, Jae-Min. You should be. I'm afraid of losing you." The words came out fierce, certain. "That night I asked you to take me to the hospital. You saved my life. You've protected me, cared for me, made me feel safe when I had nothing. So now I'm choosing to stay in your world. If you'll have me." For the first time since she'd known him, Kang Jae-Min's composure shattered completely. His head dropped, shoulders shaking with something between laughter and sobs. "If I'll have you," he repeated, voice raw. "Naomi, you're the only thing I want, the only real thing in my entire life." He stood, then knelt beside her bed, bringing them eye to eye. His hand covered hers on her stomach, their position from the ultrasound, but transformed now by truth and choice. "I will burn my entire world down before I let it touch you again," he said, fierce and certain. "I'll restructure everything, step back from the underground, focus on legitimate business. I'll build us something clean, something safe." "Build us something real," she countered. "I don't need clean or safe. I need honest. I need you." His other hand came up to cup her face. "Stay. Build something new with me. Help me remember what light looks like." "I'm staying," she whispered. He kissed her then, desperate, tender, full of promises neither knew how to speak aloud. His hands framed her face like she was something precious, and she tasted salt from tears she couldn't tell were his or hers. When they broke apart, he rested his forehead against hers. "I will protect both of you, always. That's my vow." "I know," she breathed. "I know." Outside, Minjun made quiet phone calls that would reshape Seoul's power structure. The Choice Syndicate fell completely, its territory absorbed or disbanded. Jae-Min's underground operations began their systematic dismantling, not abandoned entirely, but transformed, minimized, made secondary to legitimate business. The message spread. Kang Jae-Min had found something worth more than power, and anyone who threatened it would face the full weight of everything he built. 6 months later, snow fell on Seoul like a benediction. Naomi woke at 2 a.m. to a pain that stole her breath. She lay still for a moment, hand on her swollen belly, counting seconds. Another contraction rolled through her, stronger this time. "Jae-Min," she whispered. He was awake instantly, years of survival instincts making him alert before his eyes fully opened. "What's wrong?" "It's time." She'd never seen him move so fast. Within minutes they were in the car, Sung-ho driving with controlled urgency through empty streets. Jae-Min held her hand, whispering encouragement in both English and Korean. "You're strong. You can do this. Kinchana, I'm here. I'm not leaving." His voice the only anchor in a sea of pain. Dr. Kim met them at the private hospital, calm and prepared. "Let's bring your baby into the world." Labor was brutal and beautiful. Naomi had never felt so powerful and so fragile at once. Through it all, Jae-Min never left her side. He held her hand through every contraction, let her squeeze until his bones ground together, whispered words of strength when she swore she couldn't continue. At 3:47 a.m., as snow continued to fall outside, a baby's cry pierced the air. "It's a boy," Dr. Kim announced, placing the tiny, perfect bundle on Naomi's chest. "Congratulations." Naomi looked down at her son, impossibly small, with dark hair and eyes that would probably match his father's, and felt her heart break open and rebuild itself around this new love. Jae-Min leaned over them both, his finger immediately captured by a tiny fist. His expression was naked wonder, all walls demolished. "Elias," Naomi whispered. "Elias J. Carter, bridging both our worlds." "Perfect," Jae-Min breathed, pressing a kiss to her sweaty forehead, then gently to their sons. "You're both perfect." Later, when Naomi was cleaned up and resting, Minjun and Sungho arrived with flowers and stuffed animals, transformed from deadly operatives into doting uncles. They took turns holding Elias with surprising gentleness, murmuring promises of protection in Korean. Dr. Kim wiped tears from her eyes. "In all my years of medicine, this is the best outcome I've ever witnessed. Not just a healthy baby, a real family." As visiting hours ended and their makeshift family dispersed, Naomi sat in the hospital bed with Elias sleeping against her chest. Jae-Min settled beside them, one arm around her shoulders, his other hand resting protectively over their son. Outside, snow fell steadily, so different from the rain that had brought them together, yet somehow the same. Both water from heaven. Both witnesses to transformation. "That night you asked me for a ride to the hospital," Jae-Min said softly, his voice carrying weight of memory. "You took a broken woman and gave her a home," Naomi finished, leaning into him. "No." He turned her face toward his, eyes serious. "You saved my life too. You gave me a reason to be more than what I was, more than power and shadows. You gave me purpose." She kissed him slowly, tasting promise and future. "Look at him," Jae-Min whispered, studying Elias's sleeping face. "So small, so trusting." "He'll never know abandonment," Naomi said fiercely. "Never know what it feels like to be thrown away or used." "Never," Jae-Min agreed. "I promise you both, our son will know only love, only safety, only us." He pressed his lips to her temple. "You asked a stranger for help, and he became your family." 6 months had brought seismic change. Victor was serving 15 years in prison, his schemes unraveled and prosecuted. The Choi Syndicate had disbanded completely, its power scattered. Jae-Min had restructured his entire empire. Legitimate businesses thriving while underground operations were systematically dismantled. Their penthouse had transformed from sterile showpiece to actual home. Baby clothes drying on racks, photos covering the refrigerator, laughter echoing off walls that had never heard joy before. Naomi had enrolled in nursing school online, determined to finish the dream her mother had supported. Some mornings, she'd wake to find Jae-Min studying her textbooks, curious about her world. "Teaching me?" he'd asked once. "Building something together," she'd corrected. Now, with their son between them, Seoul glittering beyond the window like scattered stars, everything felt complete. "I begged a stranger to save me that night," Naomi murmured, stroking Elias's soft hair. "I was barefoot in the rain, pregnant and abandoned, with nowhere to go. And I was a man who'd forgotten how to be human," Jae-Min added, "who thought power was enough. Instead, we saved each other." He gathered them both closer, his whole world contained in his arms, and the girl who had nothing became the woman who has everything that matters. Elias stirred, making small sounds in his sleep. Both parents froze, mesmerized, as his tiny mouth curved into what might have been a smile. "Our son," Jae-Min said, voice thick with emotion. "Our family." "Our future," Naomi whispered. Outside, snow continued to fall on Seoul, gentle, persistent, transforming the city into something clean and new. Inside, a family born from darkness and desperation held each other close, proof that sometimes the most broken moments lead to the most beautiful beginnings. Sometimes strangers become saviors. Sometimes asking for help is the bravest thing you can do. And sometimes love grows in the space between rain and snow, between power and vulnerability, between who we were and who we choose to become. Sometimes the darkest moments lead us to the brightest futures. The girl who begged a stranger for a ride to the hospital became the woman who taught a king what love really means.